Keith Urban is on stage for his first show since Nicole Kidman filed for divorce.
Golden couple had separated after 19 years of marriage.
In the glittering world of Hollywood, where smiles often hide storms, few love stories seemed as perfect as that of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban. Two Australian icons who found each other at the height of fame. Their romance appeared to be the rare, unshakable kind. But behind the red carpet poses and heartfelt award speeches, there was a quiet struggle neither of them could fully escape. When news broke of their separation, fans were left in disbelief. What could possibly tear apart a bond that once looked unbreakable? For years, the couple avoided speaking openly about the pain behind their split. But now, after the divorce, Keith Urban has finally broken his silence, and his confession about Nicole Kidman reveals a side of their relationship the world never saw. Urban's words aren't bitter or vengeful. Instead, they come from a place of raw honesty, a reflection of love, guilt, and lessons learned the hard way. He admits that fame, addiction, and emotional distance played bigger roles in their downfall than anyone realized. But even more shocking is what he reveals about Nicole herself. Her quiet sacrifices, her attempts to save him, and the heartbreak she carried long before their marriage ended. Today, we uncover Keith Urban's emotional confession, the hidden truth behind their glamorous marriage, and the heartbreaking reality of what truly happened when two of Hollywood's brightest stars fell out of sync. When Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban first locked eyes in 2005 at the G'day USA Gala in Los Angeles, it seemed as though destiny had orchestrated their meeting. Both were towering Australian success stories. Nicole, the Academy Award-winning actress with a history of heartbreak, and Keith, the country music superstar whose charm and talent had conquered Nashville. To the public, their connection looked instant and effortless, like two souls finally finding the missing piece they'd been searching for. But beneath that perfect first impression, both carried emotional scars that would later shape their marriage in ways no one could have predicted. For Nicole, her split from Tom Cruise in 2001 had left deep wounds. After a decade-long marriage that played out under Hollywood's brightest spotlight, she was hesitant to open her heart again. The divorce had not only shaken her personally, but also redefined her public image. She was no longer one half of Hollywood's golden couple. She was now a single mother, fiercely protective of her adopted children and wary of trusting love again. Keith Urban, meanwhile, was battling demons of his own. Though his music career was thriving, behind the applause lay a dangerous struggle with addiction. Friends close to him at the time recall that fame had magnified his insecurities, and the pressure to maintain success pushed him toward self-destructive habits. When he met Nicole, however, something changed. He often described her as a light in the darkness, someone whose presence grounded him and reminded him of the man he wanted to be. Their courtship was fast, passionate, intense, and almost cinematic. Within a year, they were married in a stunning ceremony in Sydney, surrounded by family, friends, and the world's cameras. Fans couldn't get enough of the couple's radiant smiles and affectionate gestures. For many, they symbolized hope, proof that love could bloom even after heartbreak and hardship, but those close to them noticed subtle cracks forming early on. Keith's struggle with sobriety returned just months after their wedding, forcing Nicole to confront a reality she wasn't prepared for. Instead of the fairy tale marriage she had envisioned, she found herself in the role of caretaker, fighting to pull her husband away from the edge. Urban later admitted that Nicole's strength during that time was what saved him. "She stood by me when I was at my worst," he said years later. "Most people would have walked away, but she refused to give up on me." Still, behind the walls of their beautiful home, the emotional distance began to grow. Nicole's film commitments often took her across the world, while Keith's touring schedule kept him constantly on the road. Their love letters and late-night phone calls tried to bridge the gap. But the pressure of fame and physical separation quietly eroded their foundation. To the outside world, they remained the picture of devotion. Every red carpet appearance was flawless, every interview carefully worded. But the reality was more fragile. Two people desperately trying to hold together a life that was slowly slipping out of sync. Their love story once described as heaven sent, was already showing the signs of human imperfection. And though neither would admit it publicly at the time, both Nicole and Keith knew the fairy tale was starting to unravel, not out of lack of love, but because even love sometimes isn't enough when the ghosts of the past refuse to fade. Behind the glossy magazine covers and public displays of affection, the reality of Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman's marriage was far more complicated than anyone imagined. To the world, they were a couple deeply in love, always smiling, always holding hands. But behind those closed doors, they were quietly battling demons that fame and fortune couldn't heal. Just a few months after their lavish Sydney wedding, cracks began to show. Keith's relapse into addiction shocked Nicole, who had believed that love could conquer all. The man she married, charming, gentle, and grounded, was suddenly slipping away into old habits. Urban's dependence on alcohol and substances became a constant shadow over their marriage, one that Nicole fought desperately to banish. She organized interventions, encouraged therapy, and even stepped away from projects to be with him. But nothing could stop the spiral until Keith hit rock bottom. In 2006, just 4 months after their wedding, Keith checked himself into rehab. To the tabloids, it was scandalous. To Nicole, it was heartbreaking. Yet despite her pain, she refused to abandon him. "She saved my life," Keith later confessed in an interview. "I was drowning, and she pulled me out before I went under completely." But while his recovery would mark the beginning of healing, it also left lasting scars on their relationship, trust issues, emotional distance, and the quiet fear that it could all fall apart again. For Nicole, the strain was immense. She had built her career on discipline and composure, but behind the scenes, she was emotionally exhausted. Between film sets and family responsibilities, she carried the weight of being the emotional anchor, not just for Keith, but for their growing family. Friends would later say that she often looked drained, her smile softer, her eyes more distant. It wasn't that she stopped loving Keith. It was that love had become an uphill climb. Meanwhile, Keith struggled with guilt. He adored Nicole and admired her strength, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he had failed her. In songs like Once in a Lifetime and Stupid Boy, fans could hear glimpses of his remorse and longing. He used music as his confession booth, pouring out emotions that he couldn't always express in words. "Every time I performed, I was really singing to her," he said in a later interview. "I wanted her to know I was still trying, but fame has a way of amplifying pain." Every argument became a headline, every gesture analyzed by tabloids. Rumors of trouble circulated constantly, even when they tried to present a united front. Nicole, ever the professional, continued her work, winning awards, starring in acclaimed films, while Keith toured the world, often alone. The physical distance between them only deepened the emotional gap. Despite their efforts, the weight of it all began to change them. Keith became more introspective, quieter in interviews, often deflecting questions about his marriage. Nicole, though graceful as ever, began speaking more openly about the challenges of love in the spotlight. "Marriage is hard," she once admitted. "It's about choosing to stay even when it's not easy." For years, they managed to maintain the illusion of stability, bound by love, duty, and shared dreams. But behind the glamour, they were two people carrying invisible bruises, one from fighting addiction, the other from holding a relationship together through sheer willpower. By the time they quietly decided to part ways, there was no dramatic betrayal or explosive argument, just exhaustion, acceptance, and an understanding that sometimes even love can't heal everything. And yet, Keith Urban's later confession would prove that their story was far from over, because the truth he revealed about Nicole Kidman wasn't one of anger or regret, but of profound gratitude and painful honesty. When Keith Urban finally decided to speak publicly about his marriage and divorce from Nicole Kidman, the world expected bitterness, blame, or at least a touch of resentment. But what he revealed was the complete opposite. His confession wasn't about anger. It was about remorse, love, and a deep appreciation for a woman who stood by him long after the world had stopped believing in him. In an emotional interview, Keith admitted that the failure of their marriage wasn't due to a lack of love, but rather his inability to love himself at the time. Nicole didn't walk away because she stopped caring, he confessed. She walked away because I gave her no peace. I was fighting a war inside my own head. Those words stunned fans, who had long assumed the pressures of fame or distance had broken them apart. But Keith's truth was far more personal and far more painful. He described Nicole as his greatest mirror, someone who forced him to confront his darkest self. When he was lost in addiction, she was there, patient, compassionate, and unflinching. When he tried to push her away, she refused to abandon him. Yet, despite her devotion, Keith said he could never truly believe he deserved her. I used to think love was supposed to fix you, he admitted. But I realized love only gives you the strength to fix yourself. Keith revealed that Nicole's quiet strength often intimidated him. She had an almost spiritual resilience, the ability to forgive, to move forward, to carry herself with grace even when her heart was breaking. He said there were nights when she'd hold his hand while he battled withdrawal, whispering that she believed in him, even when he didn't. But with time, he realized that her love came with limits. She saved me more times than I can count, he said softly. But no one can keep saving someone who refuses to stay saved. It was during his recovery, years after the separation, that Keith finally understood what Nicole had endured. In therapy, he began to see how his addiction and insecurities had taken an emotional toll on her. I used to think she was cold, he said, but she wasn't. She was just tired of being strong all the time. That realization, he admitted, broke his heart more than the divorce itself. What moved fans most about Keith's confession was his refusal to rewrite history. He didn't portray himself as a victim or villain, nor did he diminish Nicole's role in his healing. Instead, he called her his greatest teacher. Nicole taught me that love isn't about fixing each other, he said. It's about showing up, even when it hurts. He also revealed that their connection never fully disappeared, even after the divorce. They maintained mutual respect and occasional contact, especially for the sake of peace and closure. Keith admitted that he still prays for her happiness, and that every time he sees her succeed, he feels nothing but pride. She deserves every bit of peace she's found, he said. She earned it. His honesty resonated deeply with fans who had seen countless celebrity breakups end in bitterness. Instead, Keith Urban's confession reminded the world that love doesn't always vanish when a relationship ends. Sometimes, it simply transforms. But behind that humility was one lingering truth he couldn't ignore. He still loved Nicole, not as a partner, but as the person who once saved his life when he didn't think he was worth saving. And while he found redemption through sobriety, music, and faith, it was Nicole's enduring compassion that became his moral compass, the reminder that even broken people can love deeply, and that sometimes the hardest goodbyes are the ones said with gratitude instead of anger. Time has a way of softening pain, turning heartbreak into wisdom, and for both Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman, that has proven true. In the years following their separation, they each embarked on a journey of healing, rediscovery, and quiet acceptance. Their story wasn't defined by scandal or betrayal, but by two people learning to let go with grace and to honor the love that once was. For Keith Urban, healing began with honesty. After years of hiding behind success, he finally confronted his past head-on. Through therapy, music, and spiritual reflection, he rebuilt his life piece by piece. His music took on a new depth. Songs once centered on fame and freedom began to explore redemption, vulnerability, and gratitude. In several performances, fans noticed subtle nods to Nicole, not in the form of regret, but in reverence. "Every good thing I've learned about love," he once told a crowd, "came from the hardest lessons." Keith eventually found peace and stability in his continued career and in his role as a mentor to younger musicians. He used his story as a cautionary tale, a reminder that success means nothing without emotional health. "You can win awards, sell records, travel the world," he told one interviewer, But if you can't face yourself in the mirror, none of it matters. Nicole Kidman, meanwhile, also experienced a rebirth of sorts. Free from the turbulence that marked much of her earlier years, she began to focus more on her family, her craft, and her own well-being. Her film choices became more introspective, roles that reflected strength, grace, and resilience. Those close to her said she found a sense of inner peace she hadn't known in decades. In later interviews, Nicole spoke kindly about Keith, never indulging in bitterness or blame. "He's a good man with a kind heart," she once said. "We both walked through fire, and we came out better people." That simple statement captured the essence of their story. Not a failed marriage, but a transformative chapter in two lives shaped by love, loss, and redemption. What makes their story so powerful isn't that it ended, but how it ended. In an industry known for drama and ego, Keith and Nicole chose silence, dignity, and respect. There were no public feuds, no harsh words, just two souls acknowledging that they had outgrown their shared journey. Over time, their paths diverged, yet they remained connected by memory and mutual gratitude. Whenever they were asked about each other in interviews, their responses were tender, never defensive. Keith would smile softly and say, "She'll always be a part of my story," while Nicole would add, "Some loves don't end, they just change form." Fans often speculate whether either of them still carries feelings for the other, but perhaps the answer lies not in romance but in peace. They've both learned that love isn't about possession. It's about wishing the other well, even from afar. Today, Keith Urban stands as a symbol of redemption, a man who faced his demons and found balance through humility and music. Nicole Kidman remains one of Hollywood's most respected and graceful figures, admired not just for her talent, but for her quiet strength and humanity. Their story reminds us that even the most beautiful love can be imperfect, and even heartbreak can lead to healing. Sometimes the end of a relationship isn't a failure. It's simply a lesson wrapped in love. Keith Urban's confession was never about regret. It was about recognition, recognizing the woman who stood by him when he couldn't stand for himself, and recognizing that letting her go was part of becoming the man he was always meant to be. And perhaps that's the legacy of their love, proof that even when two people drift apart, the love they shared can still echo through the years, not as a wound but as a song that never truly ends.